It started as these things often do with a move. The apartment was a steel, one of those pre-war buildings with thick walls and floors that groan with history. I work from home proofreading subtitles for a streaming service, which is a fancy way of saying I spend my nights staring at a screen, fueled by cheap coffee and the existential dread of a looming deadline. The silence of the night is usually my ally, but that was before Mr. Finch. He lived across the hall in 4 billion. I'd only seen him a couple of times in the daylight. He was an old man, maybe late 70s, with a face like a crumpled paper bag and eyes that seemed to be perpetually looking at something just over my shoulder. He'd give a curt, almost imperceptible nod if we passed in the hallway, but never a word. He carried with him an aura of finality, like a library book that had been read and put back on the shelf for the last time. The first time it happened, I almost didn't register it. It was exactly midnight. I know because I was in a frantic race against the clock on a terrible French rom-com, and the digital clock on my monitor flipped from 23:59 to 0 o'clock. At that precise second I heard it, the click of his door opening. Then the sound of shoes on the worn linoleum of the hallway. It wasn't a shuffle like you'd expect from a man his age. It was a measured, deliberate pace. Click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. The sound was crisp, sharp like old, hard leather soles, then the distant, weary sigh of the ancient elevator doors opening and closing. And then silence. I thought nothing of it. Maybe he was a night shift security guard or just an insomniac who liked a midnight stroll. Fine, but it happened again the next night. And the night after that, and the night after that, midnight, on the dot. The same sequence of sounds, a ritual played out with unnerving precision. It became a part of my own routine. The click of his door was my cue to get up and make another pot of coffee. The sound of his footsteps became the metronome to my frantic typing. It was a bizarre, one-sided relationship. He had no idea he was the new, unsettling soundtrack to my life, but his consistency started to gnaw at me. Who goes out at exactly midnight every single night without fail? Rain or shine, I knew because on a Tuesday it was storming, thunder rattling my window panes, and I still heard it. Click-clack, click-clack, a man walking out into a deluge at midnight. It wasn't just a habit anymore, it felt like a compulsion. An appointment he could not, under any circumstances, miss. And my God, the curiosity, it started as a spark, but it was quickly growing into a fire. My curiosity festered. It turned from a passive observation into an active, low-grade obsession. I'm not proud of it. I felt like a character in a Hitchcock film, the lonely neighbor peering through the blinds. My work started to suffer. I'd find myself pausing mid-sentence, my eyes glued to the clock as it crept towards midnight, my heart starting to thump in anticipation. The French rom-com could wait, the real drama was happening just outside my door. My first attempts at investigation were pathetic. I started by peeking through my peephole. The lens was old and distorted, making the hallway look like a fishbowl. But every night I'd see the same thing, the back of Mr. Finch's head, his slightly stooped shoulders, and that coat. He always wore the same heavy, outdated tweed overcoat. It was a thick, oppressive-looking garment, the kind of thing you'd wear to brave a winter on the moors, not a mild city night. It didn't matter if it was a balmy 60 degrees or a chilly 40, the coat was a constant. I never saw his face, just the back of him as he walked towards the elevator, a solitary, unchanging silhouette. One night I got bold. The moment I heard his door click open, I darted to my own, easing it open just a crack. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I saw him press the elevator button, the old machine whirred to life somewhere in the guts of the building. I wanted to call out, to say something, anything, hey, forgot your mail, or working late, but the words wouldn't form. There was something about his presence, even from behind, that felt intensely private, almost sacred. It felt like interrupting a prayer. The elevator doors opened, he stepped inside without a backward glance, and they slid shut with a soft, final thump. I had failed, I gave up for a while, telling myself it was none of my business. Reese, you're a subtitle proofreader, not a private eye, get a grip. For a few weeks I tried to ignore it. I put on headphones, cranked up the music, and tried to lose myself in my work. But the silence when I took them off felt louder, more charged. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday. I heard the usual sequence, the click, the footsteps, but this time they were followed by a new sound. A faint, metallic clink like a coin dropping on the floor. It was barely audible, but in the dead quiet of the building it was as loud as a gunshot. I waited, my breath held. I heard nothing else. The elevator sighed. He was gone. My curiosity, which I had tried so hard to smother, roared back to life 10 times stronger. I counted to 30, then slowly, quietly opened my door. The hallway was empty, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the single overhead light. I scanned the floor, and there it was. lying halfway between his door and mine, gleaming faintly against the scuffed linoleum. It wasn't a coin, it was a key. That key became the center of my universe. I scooped it up, the brass cool and heavy in my palm, and retreated back into my apartment, locking the deadbolt as if I'd just stolen a state secret. It was unlike any key I'd ever seen. It was old, for one thing. The kind of ornate, slightly Baroque key you see in old movies with a circular, filigreed head and a long, solid shaft. It was heavy too, made of what looked like real brass, tarnished with age. But the most captivating part was the emblem etched into the head. It wasn't a letter or a number. It was a strange, stylized symbol that looked at first glance like the claw of a large bird, three sharp talons with a fourth hooking back. It was intricate, precise, and utterly alien. My work was completely forgotten. The next few days were a blur of obsessive, fruitless searching. My first, most logical thought was that it must be for a lock somewhere in the building. Armed with my new artifact, I became a phantom, testing it on every lock I could find. The door to the laundry room in the basement. No, the rickety gate to the small, concrete-paved roof. No, the old, dusty storage cages that no one had used in years. Nothing, the key slid in, but it didn't turn. It didn't belong here. So I turned to the internet. I spent hours I should have been working. Hours I was definitely not getting paid for, hunched over my laptop, typing every possible combination of search terms I could think of. Antique brass key, bird claw symbol. Vintage key, three talons emblem. Secret society key. I fell down a rabbit hole of Freemasonry, collegiate secret societies, and antique lock forums. I sent a picture of the key to a subreddit for locksmiths, who told me it was a type of warded lock key, common in the early 20th century but largely obsolete now. No one recognized the symbol. My imagination went into overdrive. I started building these elaborate narratives in my head. Mr. Finch was the last living member of a forgotten order, and every night he went to their secret, decaying headquarters to perform some ancient rite. Or maybe he was a crypt keeper, and this was the key to a forgotten mausoleum in one of the city's older cemeteries. Or the most mundane and therefore most likely theory, it was just the key to a piece of antique furniture, a roll-top desk, or a grandfather clock, and he was just a weird old guy who liked to go out for a midnight drive. Still, that didn't explain the coat or the rigid timing. The theories were thrilling, but they were also just smoke. I was a detective with a single, incomprehensible clue, and every dead end just made me more determined to find the lock it was meant for. I felt like I was on the verge of uncovering something magnificent, something hidden just beneath the surface of my boring, everyday life. Edit 1. Wow, okay, this blew up way more than I expected. Thanks for all the comments and theories, you guys are as invested as I am. A lot of you are asking some really specific questions, so I figured I should clarify a few things in an edit. My bad for leaving this out, I was just typing as it came to my head last night. A few people asked why I don't just, knock on his door and ask him. In the daylight, I've thought about it. I've stood in front of his door with the key in my pocket, my knuckles hovering over the wood, but I can't. There's this vibe he gives off. It's not hostile, not exactly. It's more like a wall, a polite, quiet, but absolute do not disturb sign hanging over him. It feels like it would be a massive violation to just confront him. But here's the other thing, the thing I forgot to mention, which is probably the weirdest part of all this. It's the smell. Every time he leaves, after the sound of the elevator has faded, a very peculiar smell lingers in the hallway. It's not a bad smell, not like garbage or anything. It's just strange, it's really hard to describe. The closest I can get is it smells like a storm. You know that smell right after a huge thunderstorm in the summer when the air is thick and wet? It's like that. It's the smell of damp earth, of petrichor. But there's something else mixed in, something sharper. A clean, almost sterile scent like ozone or the air around a big, running piece of electronics. Earthy and electric at the same time. It hangs in the air for maybe 10 or 15 minutes and then it's gone. I've never smelled anything like it. It doesn't smell like cologne or anything a person would wear. It smells like a place. And every night when he leaves, he brings a little bit of that place with him. The key, the coat, the timing, and now this smell, it's all connected. I know it is, I just don't know how. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. A few days after my Reddit post, my kitchen sink decided to stage a protest, gurgling ominously before backing up completely with murky, disgusting water. I called building management, and a couple of hours later, Sal showed up at my door. Sal was the building's handyman, a relic from a time when buildings had handymen instead of outsourced service contracts. He must have been in his late 60s, with a friendly, wrinkled face and hands that looked like they'd personally shaken hands with every pipe and wire in the building's 5-decade history. He was a talker, As he worked, snaking the drain and grumbling about tenants pouring grease down the sink, he filled the air with stories about the building's past. On a whim, as he was packing up his tools, I pulled out the key. I'd started carrying it with me everywhere like a talisman. "Hey, Sal," I said, trying to sound casual. "You wouldn't happen to recognize this, would you?" He took the key, his heavy thumb rubbing over the emblem. He squinted at it, holding it up to the light from my window. "Huh. Now that's a blast from the past," he grunted. "The key itself, no, haven't seen one like this in ages, but this little fella," he tapped the bird claw symbol. "Yeah, I know him." My heart did a little lurch. "You do?" "Sure," he said, handing it back. "That's not a bird claw, kid. That's the old logo for the Raven Creek Water Authority. Before the city consolidated everything in the, must have been the late 50s, early 60s. They managed all the old storm drains and maintenance tunnels under this part of the city. Ancient stuff, most of it's been sealed off for decades." My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. Tunnels under the building. Sal nodded, already halfway out the door. "Oh yeah. Miles of 'em. There's probably still a sealed access point in the basement somewhere, behind all the junk. They used to have 'em in all the big pre-war buildings along this street. God knows what it looks like down there now, probably just rats and rust." He gave a cheerful wave and was gone, leaving me standing in the middle of my kitchen, the smell of Drano and revelation hanging in the air. The blood drained from my face. "It's not a bird claw, it's the Raven Creek Water Authority." His words echoed in my head, the smell, the damp, earthy ozone smell, the tunnels. The sealed access point in the basement. It wasn't a secret society. It wasn't a cemetery. It was something right here, right under my feet. And all at once I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that Mr. Finch wasn't going out every night. He was going down, the basement. I'd only been down there once to see the pathetic laundry room and had written it off as a cavern of forgotten furniture and dust bunnies the size of small animals. Now it felt like the most important place on earth. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and took the stairs down, my footsteps echoing in the concrete well. The basement was just as I remembered. A single bare bulb cast long, dancing shadows, making the piles of junk look like crouching beasts. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and cold stone. The access point, Sal said it would be sealed. I started at one end of the long, rectangular room, running my hand along the cool, painted cinderblock wall. I pushed aside dusty old dressers, stacks of yellowed newspapers, and a truly hideous lamp from the 1970s. Nothing. I was starting to think Sal was mistaken, his memory clouded by time. And then I saw it. Tucked away in the far corner, almost completely obscured by a stack of bald tires, was a section of the wall that was just slightly different. It was a faint, rectangular outline, maybe 3 feet wide and 4 feet high. It had been painted over so many times that it had almost blended seamlessly with the surrounding wall, but the outline was there if you knew to look for it. And at waist height, nearly invisible under layers of cream-colored paint, was a small, circular metal plate. The keyhole, my breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the key steady. I scraped away some of the chipped paint from the keyhole with my thumbnail. The brass key felt cold and alive in my hand. I slid it into the lock. It was a perfect fit. For a second I hesitated. A voice in my head, the rational part of me that had been screaming for weeks, was now shrieking, "Walk away, Reese. Just go back upstairs and forget you ever saw this." But I couldn't, I had to know. I turned the key. The sound was horrifyingly loud in the silence. A deep, grinding scrrrap of metal on metal that had been dormant for half a century. The lock disengaged with a heavy, final chunk. I pulled on the edge of the small door. It was heavy, solid iron, and it resisted for a moment before swinging inward with a low groan. A wave of air washed over me and I gagged. It was the smell from the hallway, but 100 times more potent. The damp, rich smell of ancient, undisturbed earth, the sharp tang of ozone, and something else, something metallic and vaguely unpleasant, like old blood. I pointed my phone's flashlight into the opening. It wasn't a room, it was a void, a black square that swallowed the light. I could just make out the top of a narrow, iron ladder descending into absolute darkness. And I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was faint, coming from deep within the tunnel below. A rhythmic, methodical sound, scrape, scrape, scrape. It was the sound of metal dragging on stone. I stood there, frozen, listening to this impossible sound rising from the blackness under my building. He was down there, right now, and I finally knew where he went every night. He didn't leave the building at all. He just left our level of reality. And as I stood there, paralyzed by a fear so profound it felt like a physical weight, I realized I had made a terrible, terrible mistake. I slammed the heavy iron door shut, the sound echoing through the basement, and ran. Update, holy shit, oh my god, I found the door. It's in the basement, just like Sal said. It leads to the old city tunnels. I don't even know how I made it back up the stairs. My legs felt like they were made of water. I'm back in my apartment now. I have the deadbolt on, the chain lock, and a chair wedged under the doorknob like in the movies. I know it's stupid, I know it won't do anything, but I had to do something. I'm trying to type this and my hands are shaking so badly I keep hitting the wrong keys. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I opened it. I actually opened the door. The smell, God, the smell is still in my nose, and the sound, that scraping sound coming from the darkness. I can't get it out of my head. I feel like I've looked into a place I was never meant to see and now I can't unsee it. I keep telling myself it's okay, I'm safe in here, he doesn't know it was me. He couldn't possibly know, it was dark, I was quiet, right? Wait, hold on, I just stopped typing to listen. The building is usually dead silent at this time of night. But I can hear something, it's very faint. A low, rhythmic thrumming, no, not a thrum, a scraping. Oh God, no, it can't be, I must be imagining it, it's just the pipes or the heating. It has to be, but it's not, it's getting louder. It's the same sound I heard from the tunnel, the sound of metal on stone, but it's not a distant echo anymore. It's not coming from the basement. It's right under me, it's coming from under my floor. I just stood up from my chair and I can feel it. I can feel the vibrations through the soles of my shoes. A faint grating tremor that runs up my legs. It's moving, it's not in one spot. It's moving slowly, methodically under the floorboards. It's tracing a path from the wall that faces the stairwell heading towards the center of my living room. He knows I found the door. He must have heard me. He heard the lock, he heard the door slam. He knows someone was there, and now he's looking. The scraping has stopped being a sound and started being a search. He's down there in the dark right beneath me. He knows, oh my God, he knows I know, that was it. That was the last coherent thought I had. The moment the realization hit that the sound was not just a sound but a presence, a pursuit, my brain snapped. The part of me that was a curious neighbor, a Reddit poster, an amateur detective, it all just evaporated, burned away by a primal animal terror. There was no more theorizing. There was no more investigation. There was only one imperative screaming in every cell of my body, get out. I didn't pack, I didn't grab my laptop. I didn't even think to put on a jacket. I just snatched my wallet off the counter and my car keys from the hook by the door. I ripped the chair out from under the doorknob, my hands fumbling with the locks. I didn't dare look back at the floor. I could still feel the faint, horrible vibration under my feet. I threw the door open and ran. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2, 3 at a time, my feet pounding on the metal steps, the noise of frantic drumbeat against the sudden, terrifying silence from my apartment. I didn't look back. I didn't dare, I just ran. Final update, I'm writing this from a friend's couch 100 miles away. I've been here for 3 days, I haven't really slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see that black square in the basement and I hear that scraping sound. I told my friend I had a carbon monoxide leak in my apartment and had to get out. It was the most believable lie I could come up with on the spot. I called my landlord from a burner phone app and told him I was breaking my lease, that I'd pay whatever penalty, I just wasn't coming back. He was confused, but I don't think he cared as long as he got his money. I couldn't stop myself. Yesterday I drove back, I didn't get out of the car. I just parked across the street and looked at the building. It looked so normal, so mundane in the afternoon light. Just another old brick building on a quiet street. But I know what's underneath it. My old apartment 4A already had a paper "for rent" sign taped inside the window. That wasn't a surprise. But the thing that made all the hair on my arms stand up, the thing that made me put the car in drive and speed away without looking back, was the window next to mine. Mr. Finch's window, apartment 4 billion. It had a "for rent" sign in it too.